shy girl noticed the symptoms everyone ignored, then ended up saving the CEO's life. Maya was the kind of intern most people forgot was even in the room. She kept her head down, her voice soft, and her notebooks filled with neat, tiny handwriting. In the towering glass headquarters of Halvorsen Industries, she was the quietest person on the 42nd floor. The CEO, Daniel Halvorsen, was the opposite: confident, loud, and constantly in motion. He was known for his relentless energy, his endless meetings, and his refusal to slow down. People said he was unstoppable. That Tuesday morning, Daniel stepped into the conference room halfway through a presentation. The senior executives laughed at his sharp joke and passed him a cup of black coffee. Maya, seated in the far corner, with her notes, kept her eyes down until she noticed something. Daniel's left hand trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee. His speech was a little slower than usual, almost slurred, though no one else seemed to notice. His skin had a faint sheen of sweat, even though the air conditioning was on full blast. She remembered her mother's stories. Her mother was a nurse, about how certain symptoms could be subtle signs of something serious. Maya's pulse quickened. Could it be? For 10 minutes, she debated whether she was imagining it. Around her, the executives carried on, oblivious. But when Daniel stood up to make a point, he stumbled slightly, catching himself on the table, still smiling, as if nothing happened. Maya couldn't stay silent anymore. She rose to her feet, her voice trembling. "Mr. Halvorsen, I think you need to go to the hospital now." The room fell silent. Daniel blinked at her, half amused, half annoyed. "Excuse me." She took a deep breath, every eye in the room on her. "You're sweating, your hand is shaking, and your speech sounds a little off. My mom's a nurse. These can be early signs of a stroke." One of the VPs chuckled nervously. "I think you're overreacting, Maya." But Daniel's expression changed. Slowly, he set his coffee down. "I actually don't feel quite right." Within minutes, his assistant had called an ambulance. The paramedics confirmed it. He was showing early signs of a stroke. They said if she hadn't spoken up, the damage could have been far worse. 2 days later, Maya was called into Daniel's private office. He looked pale, but alive, his usual booming voice gentler. "You saved my life," he said simply, "and in my book, that makes you a lot more than just an intern." From that day on, Maya wasn't just the shy girl in the corner. She was the young woman who saw what no one else did because she had the courage to speak when it mattered most. Alright, here's the expanded, more cinematic version of Shy Girl Noticed the Symptoms Everyone Ignored and ended up saving the CEO's life, with richer detail, more dialogue, and deeper character beats. Maya Patel had been at Halvorsen Industries for 6 weeks and had barely spoken more than 20 words to anyone outside her department. She was a marketing intern, tucked away in a cubicle by the window with her spreadsheets and highlights. Her dark hair often fell forward like a curtain, giving her a shield from the busy, intimidating corporate world. The other interns joked that you could fire a cannon in the middle of the office and Maya wouldn't raise her voice above a whisper. She preferred it that way. That Tuesday morning was the quarterly strategy meeting, a big deal. The CEO himself, Daniel Halvorsen, would be present. The room buzzed with nervous energy as the senior team took their seats around the massive glass table. Maya sat in the very last chair, a safe distance from the action, notebook in hand. At exactly 9:07 a.m., the door opened and Daniel swept in, charismatic as ever. Tall, with silvering hair and a crisp navy suit, he greeted the executives with an easy confidence. "Morning, everyone. Let's get to it." The meeting began. Numbers flashed on the presentation screen. People spoke rapidly, throwing around projections and market jargon. Maya wrote in neat bullet points, trying to keep up. Then she noticed something. Daniel's left hand trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee. Not much, just a small, irregular shake, but enough to catch her eye. She frowned. Maybe he's just cold. A few minutes later, when he spoke, she detected the faintest slur in his words. It was so subtle that no one else reacted. They laughed at his jokes, nodded at his comments, but Maya's chest tightened. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Her mother had been a nurse for 20 years. If you ever see someone's face drooping, their speech slurring, or their hands trembling, don't ignore it. Those are early signs. Minutes matter. She tried to push the thought away. Don't be ridiculous. He's the CEO. Probably just tired. But then Daniel stood to emphasize a point and stumbled slightly, catching himself on the table. He smiled it off, waving for someone to continue. That was it. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Her heart pounded. She could feel the heat rushing to her face. Every instinct told her to stay quiet. But another voice, the one her mother had taught her to listen to, said, "Do something." She stood. "Mr. Halvorsen." The room went dead silent. Heads turned. A senior VP raised an eyebrow. "Yes," Daniel said, looking amused. I think you should go to the hospital, right now." A ripple of confused laughter went around the table. "Excuse me?" Daniel asked, clearly surprised. Maya swallowed hard. Her voice trembled, but she forced herself to speak. "You're sweating. Your left hand is shaking. Your speech is slightly slurred. Those can be signs of a stroke. My mom's a nurse. She taught me to watch for them." The VP sitting nearest to her chuckled. "Maya, I think you're overreacting." But Daniel didn't laugh. He blinked, processing her words. Then he set down his coffee slowly and flexed his hand. "You know, I actually don't feel quite right." Within seconds, his assistant was dialing 911. The paramedics arrived in under 10 minutes, confirmed her suspicions, and rushed him to the hospital. 2 days later, Maya was working quietly at her desk when Daniel's assistant appeared. "The CEO would like to see you." Her stomach dropped. She walked into his office, unsure if she'd be thanked or reprimanded for interrupting that meeting. Daniel sat behind his desk, a little paler, but very much alive. A bouquet of flowers sat on the corner of his desk, along with a hospital bracelet. "Maya," he said, smiling warmly. "The doctors told me I was on the edge of something catastrophic. If you hadn't spoken up, well, I wouldn't be sitting here right now." She blushed furiously. I didn't want to overstep, but you didn't overstep. You saved my life." He leaned forward. "And for the record, I'd rather have 100 interns who speak up when something's wrong than a room full of people who say nothing." From that day on, Maya's name was known across the company, not because she was the shy girl in the corner, but because she was the intern who noticed what everyone else ignored and had the courage to act. Maya Patel's life at Health Industries could be summed up in 3 words: invisible, predictable, quiet. Her days were spent tucked in a cubicle by the far window, headphones in, eyes glued to spreadsheets and marketing briefs. At 22, she was an intern still fresh out of college, unused to the sharp edges of corporate life. The other interns made friends easily, gathering in the break room, laughing over coffee runs. Maya stayed out of the way, eating lunch at her desk, blending into the wallpaper. She didn't mind. Being unnoticed meant being safe. What she didn't know was that this particular Tuesday would burn her name into the company's history. The quarterly strategy meeting was a big deal. Senior executives, department heads, and, most importantly, Daniel Halvorsen himself. The CEO rarely came down from the top floor, so when he did, the office buzzed like an electrical current. The conference room on the 42nd floor gleamed, polished, glass table, panoramic view of the city skyline, and a massive digital display ready for the presentation. Maya slipped into the last chair at the far end, her trusty leather notebook in front of her. She had no intention of speaking. Interns weren't here to talk, only to listen. At exactly 9:07 a.m., the door opened. Daniel Halvorsen swept in tall, broad-shouldered, with a perfectly tailored navy suit. He was in his late 50s, but carried himself with the energy of a man half his age. His silver hair caught the light, his deep voice filling the room instantly. "Morning, everyone," he said with a charming smile. "Let's make this quick so we can all get back to making money." Laughter rippled around the table. Maya's pen moved automatically, recording every word. It happened maybe 10 minutes into the meeting. Daniel reached for his coffee, but Maya noticed his left hand trembled just slightly, but enough to make the cup clink against the saucer. Maybe it's nothing, she thought. Maybe he's just tired. The conversation went on, charts and numbers flying by. But then she caught something else. When Daniel spoke, there was the faintest slur in his words, as if he had marbles in his mouth. No one reacted. The senior executives nodded along, hanging on his every word. Maya's stomach tightened. Her mother's voice came back to her, clear as day. If someone's speech sounds off, or they suddenly lose coordination, don't ignore it. Even if it's subtle, it could be a stroke. And if it is, minutes matter. Daniel stood to emphasize a point in the presentation. As he moved around the table, his right foot caught on the carpet. He stumbled, not enough to fall, but enough to make his assistant glance up briefly. He laughed it off, waving a hand as if to say just clumsy. But Maya saw more. His left arm seemed stiff, almost hanging differently from his right.